One of the biggest mistakes that we make is that we vastly overestimate the importance of financial wealth to the detriment of many other types of wealth that we need in our lives. In the book, 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil, what Sahil talks about is 5 different types of wealth that altogether are critical for our overall success and happiness. He talks about time wealth, social wealth, physical wealth, mental wealth, as well as financial wealth. And in this episode of the Changing Minds podcast, we're going to dive into 3 of the types of wealth that he discusses in that book. Last week, we talked about time wealth and social wealth. That's wealth in terms of our relationships. But today, we're going to look at the importance of our mental wealth, the importance of our physical wealth, and also, of course, our financial wealth. And we'll bring them all together so that by the end of this episode, you'll understand exactly what you need to do to ensure that you've got as much mental wealth, as much physical wealth, and hopefully as much financial wealth as you possibly need. This is going to be a really, really useful episode. See you inside. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Change Your Minds podcast. My name is Owen Fitzpatrick, and today we're going to talk about the 5 types of wealth, but we're going to continue the conversation that we started last week. And if you haven't checked out the episode from last week, make sure you do so. But in last week's episode, we looked at this book called The 5 Types of Wealth. And in it, Sahil has written a really nice book where he walks through the most important elements that we need to focus on if we are to have an overall wealthy life. He says the metrics of measuring wealth really has been over-optimized around the financial wealth. And he says that in order for us to live fulfilling lives, we need to ensure that we're balancing the 5 types of wealth, as he calls it. And he looks at the importance of what we do with our time, the importance of our relationships, the importance of our physical health and well-being, the importance of our mental health, as well as finally, our financial wealth. And he says that financial wealth is grand and great, but it's not enough. And we really need to focus on some of the other areas of life so we can be truly happy. Sahil started off, he was an investor in the financial world, very successful. And he had a sort of a moment of crisis where he really figured out that he was pursuing the financial wealth so much to the detriment of other aspects and other areas of his life. And as a result of that, he made big changes and he started up a newsletter, The Curiosity Chronicle, in 2021, wrote this book, The 5 Types of Wealth, in 2025. And it really is a nicely written book which walks you through some of the most important elements that will help you to take control of your life. Since we're early in the year, this is the perfect book that I figured we'd start with. And therefore we did 2 different types of wealth last week. And this week we're going to do the other 3. So we're going to start off, or continue rather, in discussing the importance of mental wealth. And when we talk about mental wealth, once again, Sahil starts with a question, a thought-provoking question at the beginning of each section. So for each section, there's a question designed to be able to get you thinking in a powerful way. And the mental wealth question he asks is, what would your 10-year-old self say to you today? What would your 10-year-old self say to you today? Powerful question which forces you to reckon with, how happy are you with your life? Are you doing what it is that you want to do? Are you fulfilling your purpose? Are you pursuing what's meaningful to you? It's getting you to start to think in a way that makes it more likely that you're going to succeed, and succeed not just in terms of from a monetary point of view, but be happy with regards to the way in which you're functioning. So he talks about a number of different strategies. He talks about the 1-1-1 journaling strategy. That is making sure that every day you journal about one win, whatever it might be, that you've succeeded in something on that day. The one source of stress or tension to pay attention to look out for. And then finally, one thing that you feel grateful for. And it's important for that to be specific so that you're able to lock into, okay, this is one win. This is one source of stress I need to pay attention to. And this is one thing that I'm grateful for. So really great technique there. Another technique that he shares is known as the Feynman technique. This is based on physicist Richard Feynman's 4-step framework for learning anything. And he says the first step is you want to be able to choose a concept to study. The second step is to explain it in simple terms, as if explaining it to a novice, someone brand new. So you spend time studying something. You then have to be able to explain it to someone who's never heard it before. Then the third step is you have to pinpoint wherever you get stuck or you resort to jargon. So as soon as you start to find you're losing them and you start to resort to using bigger words or technical language, that's when you start to go back over it and revise and start to iterate and go, how can I refine this explanation into a clear story? So it's a great, very simple framework that helps us to really grasp and deepen our knowledge and master our own areas of expertise very, very effectively. So it's called the Feynman technique, but definitely recommend it as an excellent way for you to be able to get to grips with something such that you're not only able to know what it is, but you're able to understand it in a very deep way. He also talks about the pursuit map, and the pursuit map is, instead of telling people to find your passion or follow your passion, he talks about following your energy. So find your energy and follow your energy. And similar to something we talked about last week where we talked about the energy calendar, in this one, what Sahil talks about is the importance of recognizing that there's things that you're good at, right? Tasks or skills that you're high skill in and low skill in. And then there's also tasks that give you energy and some that drain energy from you. And he says that you want to watch out for, in particular, the tasks that you're good at that give you energy. They're the ones that are really what he calls the zone of genius. Whereas tasks that you're really good at but drain your energy, they're actually the zone of danger. And so you want to be aware of that. Just because you're good at it doesn't necessarily mean that you should occupy yourself with it. And the key is to be able to make it so that you're leaning into the things that give you energy. Because the more that you do that, the more it frees you up to be able to make better decisions as a result. The three pillars that he talks about in terms of mental wealth are purpose, growth, and clarity. Purpose, of course, is to be able to know what gives you meaning in life, to be able to understand why you do what you do. And his strategy is very similar to the notion of ikigai, which is the Japanese notion of the sort of Venn diagrams. He talks about, number one, list out what you love doing. Number two, list out what you're naturally good at. And number three, list out what the world needs from you. And to find out where those three line up, that's ultimately speaking what we want to be able to get to identify our purpose. And your purpose doesn't need to impress anyone else. It just needs to be something that's meaningful for you. Second of all, we talked about growth, and the growth mindset is an important part of this, is recognize the importance of growing and developing and improving, and recognizing that you can grow and develop and improve. You have the capacity to be able to learn and develop and deepen your knowledge and deepen your skills and become more successful. It requires effort. It requires taking feedback. It requires challenging yourself, and the gaps then will help you to understand what you need to know. And then be as clear as you can of exactly what is it that you're doing, exactly what is it that you need to accomplish. Get into the habit of writing things down and getting clear at exactly what's necessary for you, getting clear about your priorities. There's lots of things that you can do to become as effective as possible and being able to ensure that mentally you're as clear as you can get. But again, clarity often will come from asking yourself the right kinds of questions and trying to get as clear as you can about whatever it is that you're learning. So the Feynman technique earlier, one of the beauties of that technique is by you having to get clear enough to explain it to anyone, it also means that everything will become super clear to you too as well. So that's particularly helpful also. Now, the other type of wealth when it comes to sort of a form of, let's say, health is physical wealth. And in this, we hear a lot of the fundamentals. Many of them you've heard before, but some nice nuances that Sahil brings around. In particular, we start off with the question, which is kind of cool and funny, which is, will you be dancing at your 80th birthday party? Now, I'm not sure I would dance at any of my birthday parties, and I'm not sure anyone would want to see me dance at any of my birthday parties. But nonetheless, if you have the ability, the fitness, the energy, the vitality to be able to dance at your 80th birthday party, it suggests that you're doing a lot right. So in order to get there, in order to get to that place, what we need to do is we need to look after the fundamentals. And so one of the elements is, in terms of your nutrition, you want to eat unprocessed, mainly whole, unprocessed foods, 80 to 90% of your diet. Try to make it, that is one of the suggestions that Sahil talks about. He talks about prioritizing protein at every single meal and making sure that when you're eating protein, you're trying to consume at least 1.7 grams per kilogram of body weight daily. And that's kind of the angle to try to eat for. You're also looking to be able to eat until you're 80% full, as opposed to continuously listening to your body. Can I fit more in, right? Which is, again, some of this is sort of common sense, but it's not necessarily all common practice. In terms of physical wealth, another aspect is, of course, movement and the importance of exercise. He gives a nice little suggestion where he talks about what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to have a simple 2-minute routine, which is 5 push-ups, 5 squats, 5 lunges, and 30-second plank. And again, if you have any questions on those, you can always look them up online. But then get out and get some daylight and get a walk in for half an hour as well every day. And if you do that and you try to improve it in increments, that's definitely going to be a great foundation for you as well. Moving regularly is is critical. So you want to be able to ensure that you're working on that to the best of your ability. He also talks about, so he's food, exercise and movement and all that sort of stuff, but he also talks about the importance of recovery and rest. And he says this is the one that's most often ignored. And he gives 9 rules for sleep as a sort of a checklist. Again, to run you through these, keep a sleep schedule, which even on weekends, try to sleep, go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time the next morning, get morning sunlight, and nod to Dr. Andrew Huberman there. Sleep in a dark, cool room, avoid heavy meals or lots of liquids before bed, cut out caffeine at least 8 hours before you sleep, limit alcohol, create a wind down routine to get your brain into the mode where you're about to sleep, and then minimize screen and blue light at nighttime. And all of those will help you to improve your sleep. A lot of it based on research and science as well. So the key is, it's really important for us to be able to give ourselves the opportunity to be able to get these 3 pillars. We want to be able to make it so that we're getting enough exercise and movement. We want to be able to make sure we're eating right, obviously drinking lots of water too. And then we also want to make sure we're getting our recovery in with the deep amounts of sleep. And nothing groundbreaking, nothing radical in this particular plan. However, physical wealth is one of the most important elements because it's what fuels all the other forms of wealth as well. It's what gives us the energy that we need. And then finally, we've financial wealth. And financial wealth is really about understanding, and again, just to give you the question that Sahil uses for us to be able to think about it, is what is your definition of enough? And for this, I think in the book he does this. I've certainly heard him tell this story. But in the book, he gives an example of Joseph Heller, who's the author of a great book called Catch-22. And he's at a party with his friend Kurt Vonnegut. And one of the things that Kurt says to him is he says, the person hosting the party or whatever, he makes more money on a regular basis than you've made in your entire career for this book, Catch-22. And Heller responds and says, well, I have what he will never have. And Kurt says, what's that? And Heller says, the knowledge that I have enough, something along those lines. And it's a very powerful sort of story that argues that one of the most important things we need to pay attention to is, what is enough? What does enough mean to us? And this nods back to what we talked about in the last episode about the hedonic treadmill and this sort of arrival fallacy where we think, oh, as soon as I make this, then I'll be successful. And the research that Sahil quoted about millionaires believing that, oh, if I have twice as much money or 3 times as much money as I do now, then I'll have arrived, then I'll be successful, then I'll be happy. And he sort of talks about the importance of recognizing that fallacy. And once again, this is a problem with regards to what we mean by enough. His 3 pillars are, number 1, income generation. And this is about developing highly monetizable skills that allow us to be able to build income streams. We're in the creator economy. How can you add more value to the market? And he sort of says, look, the amount of value that you add to the market is very much connected to the amount of money that you can make. And that's something that Jim Rohn used to say as well. It's a very important point, is that work more in yourself than you do in your job. Work on yourself, and you will find yourself being able to add more value regardless of what you do. And, financial success is a byproduct of the value that you create in the marketplace. And so try to find skills that help you to be more valuable to that marketplace as well, which is important. The second pillar he talks about is expense management. This means looking at your lifestyle and making sure that your lifestyle does not exceed, from an inflation standpoint, the amount of money that you're earning. So ensuring that you're living within your means, for instance. And then finally, with long-term investment, this is about how you can move beyond the exchange of time for money and instead think through how you can start to make better investments, how you can start to think about long-term efficient, low-cost assets that compound effectively. So what are the things you could do to find ways of creating compounding value in the marketplace? And that means time to look into your ability to be able to be better in terms of investing. And again, he's been very successful in the financial area, so he's certainly a person to listen to from that perspective. Now, in terms of levels, he talks about 5 levels of financial wealth. There's a sort of a roadmap for the journey. Level 1 is when you're all in your baselines are met. So that's literally all your survival. You can eat, you can survive. Level 2 is when you can not only survive, but you can get modest pleasures. You can go for a vacation or holiday once a year. You can go into restaurants every now and then. You can spend on some things you want. Level 3 is you can do all of that. Plus, you can also save some, you can invest some, you can look to compound wealth, you can start to accumulate assets. Then level 4 is pretty much anything you want or most things that you want are available. Assets start to accumulate and you start to generate passive income from it. And then you've got a certain level of financial independence, which means that you can reduce the active income, the fact that you can reduce the amount of stuff that you have to do, the amount of work that you have to do, and you can still maintain your lifestyle by doing less than you were doing. And then level 5 is anything you want. Pretty much you're at a level where asset accumulation reaches what is known as escape velocity, and you are able to generate passive income such that if you stopped working, you're still grand. You're still earning enough money to fuel the ideal lifestyle you want. So a good way to do it is to reverse engineer your ideal lifestyle, figure out what is it that you'd ideally like to have, and then reverse engineer how much money would it require in order for you to do that on an annual basis, for instance. And then figure out, okay, this is the end game. If I was to invest this amount, this will give me this passive income. And you work backwards from there, which will help you to understand exactly what just enough is. And the idea is you want just enough, the right amount of financial wealth to live out your ideal days. But again, the focus should be about what you want to have in your life, as opposed to spending time thinking about just the numbers. And some tools that are also put through the book that I wanted to share that, are in different chapters in different parts, but they connect in with a number of different areas. You've got what he calls the wealth score. So it's like measure yourself in each of the different 5 areas and see the wealth scorecard, not just as being about the financial wealth in terms of figures there, but also in terms of different areas. You want to be able to look at each of the 5 types of wealth: time, social, physical, mental, as well as financial, and the relationship across them, and to be able to start to look at that, similar to the wheel of life, which is a popular concept that has been around for many, many years. There's also what he calls the life razor. This is quite a cool little trick. Bloom encourages a one-sentence decision-making heuristic or shortcut that allows us to be able to prioritize something in this time of your life. So it should be 3 things. It should be controllable, ripple creating, and identity defining. So an example would be Netflix co-founder Mark Randolph never misses a Tuesday dinner. Sahil's life razor is he will always coach his son's sports teams. And so what that means is no matter what's going on, Randolph will be home for dinner. No matter what's going on, Sahil will coach his son's team. And there's certain things that are implied by that, right? It's the relationship that he has, it's the time or the effort, what he's valuing. He's deciding what he's valuing or what he's putting value on by making it home for dinner, or in Sahil's case, by coaching his son's sports teams. The key is that this is a one sentence that you always commit to. And it's something that no matter what happens, this is something that is non-negotiable. So some other examples would be, I wake up early and do hard things, or I never miss a certain recital, or I never let a friend cry alone. They're just examples that are given which emphasize the importance of this is the kind of person I want to be. And it's a one sentence description of what kind of person that you want to be. So again, consider it should be, again, something you can fully control, something that defines who you are, and something that creates a positive impact in the world, as well as all the examples there do. So that's called the life razor. Then we've got the anti-goals. This is kind of partly inspired by Charlie Munger's wisdom, where he said, all I want to know is where I'm going to die, so I never go there, kind of tongue-in-cheek. Anti-goals leverage the process known as inversion, and we've talked about this as one of the mental models in a previous podcast episode. But basically, you have your goals of what you want to achieve, but you also need these, what are you prepared not to do? So if you go, I want to make $1 million in a year, right? Great. But you also need an anti-goal. So what are you not prepared to do? Are you prepared to work 7 days a week and not see your family and not see your children, or work or travel 52 weeks a year? If you say no, then that's an anti-goal. So you want to be able to, I want to achieve X, which is your goal, without Y, which is a sort of an anti-goal. So what are you prepared to make sure that you don't do or you avoid in pursuing the goals that you have? That's what you're looking for. So that's known as an anti-goal. There's also the regret minimization framework. This comes from Jeff Bezos' decision to leave hedge fund job to found Amazon. And the key is to be able to, number one, project yourself forward into the future, look back at the decision and ask yourself, will I regret not doing this? And then make sure that you act accordingly, right? So you imagine yourself in the future, you go, if I take this action, if I don't take this action, will I regret not doing this? And just projecting yourself, a little bit of mental visualization can help you to make a smarter decision, hopefully. The dimmer switch mentality is another tool that Sahil recommends, which is recognizing that your life is seasons, and these areas of life exist on dimmer switches. So in other words, it's not that you have either your physical wealth is sorted or it's not. It's that sometimes you might need to, turn up your physical wealth. Sometimes you might need to turn up your mental wealth. Sometimes you might need to turn up your financial wealth. There's certain times you need to prioritize different. And by thinking in terms of the dimmer switch, it means that you can ensure that you're looking to balance it as much as possible, but you're not getting so rigid that you are locked into either we do this or this. Instead, you're seeing them more as dimmer switches where you can turn them up and down, put in more effort, put in more energy to different areas of wealth for yourself, depending on what you're talking about. This is a life calendar visualization where you picture your life on a 52 by 90 grid. So this is, you can, I think, buy this online as well, but it shows you all of the weeks of your year and all of the weeks of your life. And as you look through it, you then sort of put an X across all of the weeks that you've already lived. And then it shows you if you're to live to, let's say, 80, then it shows you how much time you've left. And just seeing it like that is quite startling. It's similar to the question that Sahil asked again on the last episode to do with where you're spending your time, how much time do you have left with your loved ones? It really shows how much time you've left in general. So powerful question to ask. And then there's other ones. There's Eisenhower's Matrix, which I've talked about at length in other ones. That's where you make a list of all your tasks and you go, is this urgent? Is this important? If it's both urgent and important, it's in quadrant 1, important but not urgent quadrant 2, urgent but not important quadrant 3, and not important, not urgent quadrant 4. And you do what's urgent and important. You prioritize or schedule what's important and not urgent. You try to delegate what's urgent, not important, and then you delete or drop whatever is in category 4, what's not urgent, not important. That's named after Dwight D. Eisenhower, famous President of the United States. There's also Parkinson's Law. Work expands to fit the time available. So if you give yourself 30 minutes for something, you'll get it done. If you give yourself an hour for something, you'll get it done. So you always will be able to adapt to the amount of time that you're giving yourself. So give yourself shorter bursts of time and it will force you to be even more productive and efficient and effective. And again, there's like techniques like the Pomodoro technique. I'm not sure if Sahil mentions this, I can't remember, but the Pomodoro technique is you give yourself 25-minute bursts, a 5-minute break. And again, by restricting the amount of time, you actually optimize how productive you are in that time. And then finally, there's the Misoji challenge. This comes from the Japanese tradition where they say, to do one thing that has an impact on the rest of the year. So you do one hard thing a year that impacts the rest of the year. This is something that you can't do next week, even if you wanted to. Something that you have to spend time for and you have to train for and you have to think through. And it should be something that's 50-50 chance of completion and it tests your limits, right? So for me, a couple of years ago, that would have been running the marathon, the New York Marathon, which was really tough and it required a lot of training, a lot of energy, but it was my big goal for the year. This year in 2026, as you watch this, my big goal is to be able to get a New York Times best-selling book, which is ridiculously difficult. I would say it's probably not 50-50 chance of completion, probably a lot less, but sure, look, you can't win if you're not in. So the idea is that this challenge pushes us to really commit and demonstrate discipline along the way, which is also really, really helpful. So look, I very much recommend this book, The 5 Types of Wealth. I think it's an excellent book and really great for, especially early in the year, to get your mind organized, to start to have a great perspective over all aspects and energies in your life, and to be able to make sure that you've got the right kind of balance for it. So make sure you look at how are you going to ensure that you've got enough mental wealth, physical wealth, financial wealth, social wealth, and of course, time wealth to ensure that you're living the best kind of life that you possibly can. I really hope you found this useful. Please leave a review. Please share the podcast. Let more people know about it. That would be terrific. Make sure if you want to get a copy of the book, go to Amazon or Barnes & Noble and get a copy of The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. We'll have all the links in the show notes. But for now, take care, be well. May the force, as always, be with you. And we'll be back next week. Bye for now.